What is going on, Notre Dame fans? Mike Sanger and Kyle Kelly live on the Blue and Gold YouTube channel, Friday, June 28th. As always, a good bit to discuss in the world of Notre Dame football recruiting. Got a few topics to get to, and then we're just going to kind of give you all of the names on the 2025 board as things currently stand, and then kind of go from there. See what the YouTube chat's talking about with us live. And hope everyone is doing well. And has a safe upcoming weekend. Kyle, everything good on your end, my friend?
Yes, sir. We're just getting ready to rock and roll for next week. We're going to have a couple commitments coming. Some maybe in favor of Notre Dame, some maybe not. We'll see. I know one recruit announced today in favor of Stanford, John Anthony Hall, a guy Notre Dame offered and was targeting and hosting an official visit. But I think we're expecting some guys to um, end up in Notre Dame's class next week. And I'm
The
sure
rookie move, the Kyle Kelly rookie move of leaving the email or Slack or whatever that is, Kyle. I'll talk for a minute. You can mute that, okay, my friend?
I don't know how. That's the issue. So that's my buddy Jack Sobel hit me up.
All
So
right, Jack, please leave Kyle alone. Can you just close out? Close. Okay. Yeah, you're a big guy. You can figure it out. All right. We got Ian Book's brother says, "Good afternoon, gentlemen." Justin says, "Seems like it's taking forever for the next wave of commits to roll in." Yeah, that's kind of what happens when you get up to 21 commitments. You know, some of those other schools are just starting to catch up with commitments right now. Roy Boy says, "May Deuce Knight be Notre Dame's next Heisman winner." There you go. That would be that would be great. We will take that. So let's see what we got to start the show. And folks, please hit the thumbs up on this video. Subscribe to the channel for more content. Of course, if you're listening via podcast, appreciate you as well. Please leave us a 5-star review if you like the show. And if you want to get into the live chat, whether you're watching back or listening via podcast, we do this show pretty consistently Friday at 1 p.m. Eastern time. During the football season, we'll move to Thursdays due to Kyle traveling, and I'll be hitting the road a little bit this fall as well, but not as much with the baby coming in October. And then we're live a good bit throughout the week as well. Tuesday and Wednesday nights around 8 p.m. Eastern time, we usually have a show. So the first topic, Kyle, I always like some of your takes on these things. So Luke Stampini, who is I don't know his exact role. I just know he's a high up at On3. Tweeted out, updated on 300 coming soon. Shake up the QB rankings seem likely. I was interested for your take on this. What you think might happen, and especially in light of what we heard from Charles Power on Wednesday. So if you did not watch the show Wednesday, Tim Hyde and I brought on3 Director of Scouting and Rankings, Charles Power, to discuss Deuce Knight's performance at the Elite 11. And in typical Charles Power fashion, when I ask him point blank, do you see him moving up? He doesn't really answer the question. I don't think he wants to say anything before it's finalized or, they're still making those decisions. But Kyle, I know you listened to that. You wrote an interview, or excuse me, you wrote an article from that interview, basically on what Charles said. Well, what's your take on that?
yeah, so I did listen to the interview on tape delay a little bit on Wednesday night. I was walking my dog, came back, fired that up on the old computer to listen to you and Tim Hyde and interviewing Charles Power, and then after the fact, I listened back to the entire interview to transcribe it and then post it for our readership audience on the website. So, with that being said, I got a pretty good idea of Charles Power's take on Deuce Knight in the 25 quarterback class. I think I kind of know where his head's at, just listening back to that interview. And I'm just going to prepare Notre Dame fans now. And hopefully I'm wrong down the road for you guys, but this is the way I kind of see things shaking out. Bryce Underwood is still going to be the number one quarterback in the class. I think Charles Power has made that pretty clear moving forward that he verbatim said that Bryce Bryce Underwood is in a tier of his own, and I think it will remain that way. Charles Power mentioned not only does he have the traits, the intangibles, all the good things you look for in a quarterback, but he also has the successful high school career to back it up. Then also something I found really interesting that Charles Power said was that Matt Zowers is kind of in a category of his own with Bryce Underwood in terms of some of the advanced reads and the way he plays the quarterback position at this point in his career. So I feel like Charles does have a little bit more of an edge, or kind of leans toward Matt Zowers being one of these better quarterbacks in class. So I think that's a guy that's always going to be at near the top of the rankings. But from there, I really do think it's wide open with George McIntyre, Julian Lewis. I think Tavian St. Clair's in there. Yeah, and then Deuce Knight. So that's going to be the tier we're really looking at to see where the movement is going to occur. I don't think Matt Zowers had a great Elite 11. But the other thing that Charles Powers said on Wednesday night, and once again, Charles is On3's director of recruiting and scouting. He's the guy that spearheads all these rankings. So I know he was the guy that everyone was pointing to with CJ Carr's ranking, but I think hopefully down the road he'll make you a little happier with Deuce Knight. But anyway, going back to my point, there's this group of quarterbacks here with Julian Lewis, Tavian St. Clair, and Deuce Knight. Tavian also was outstanding at the Elite 11 along with
Yeah.
Deuce. But Deuce was On3's MVP.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I'm kind of word salad talking in circles here, but
Yeah.
I think that the way Charles talked on Wednesday night, he's setting the stage for Deuce Knight to make a big move in the rankings and be a potential 5-star quarterback contingent on his senior season performance. I think that's going to be the big thing we're looking for here to see Deuce Knight move up in the rankings. I think we will see him get a bump after his OT7, the 7-on-7 tournament, and Elite 11 finals event. I think Deuce Knight will move up in those rankings. But in terms of talking about Deuce Knight being a 5-star quarterback, I think it's really going to be contingent on his senior season.
So I know that like anytime a ranking comes, let's say this ranking comes out and Deuce is not a 5-star, which I don't expect him to be a 5-star. Most common Twitter folk will just be angry, right? I think for high majority of people watching this are a little bit more intelligent and can like understand some different things with this. So what we're looking at here for folks watch on YouTube is On3's ranking. Now, when we write articles on Blue and Gold, we use the On3 industry ranking because it takes into account all the websites. But this is just for the On3 ranking, which is 35% of the industry ranking, if that makes sense. 24/7's 35%, Rivals is 20, and I think ESPN 10 or something like that. The national ranking, don't worry about the national ranking. It's the most like common and easy thing to look at. But to move up in the national ranking, most of the time you really need to get bumped up in the quarterback ranking, unless they're just moving up all the quarterbacks, if that makes sense. So if Deuce stays as the number 6 quarterback in this upcoming ranking, he's not really going to move much in the national rankings. Like when I say not to get worked up about the national ranking, it's because like who really cares where Deuce Knight ranks compared to an offensive guard or a linebacker? Who cares where a running back ranks next to a safety? I think the national ranking is very much just towards fans, like because you guys are obsessed over national rankings. I wish it wasn't. I just wish it didn't exist. I wish we just had position rankings because I think this is much more of an important how things stack up for what it's worth. So as we know from Charles, like he gets these data points from an OT7 and elite 11, but I wouldn't expect like major changes until senior season. Like I think what he and the team see from these guys when they're seniors will help like what they saw and back up what they saw at like an Elite 11, if that makes sense. Like I just don't expect wholesale changes, as it should be the case. these guys, when do the rankings, senior season is the most important. Like, it's the final kind of hurrah for these guys. I mean, then you have some who go to the All American Bowls and whatnot. We'll see if Deuce, does indeed play at one of those. But for now, like, yeah, it's the senior season. So I think like you combine the Elite 11, the OT7, that stuff with what you see at the senior season, because sometimes you might have a really good camp, but doesn't translate to Friday night, or maybe you stink on a camp and then you light it up on a Friday night. So you have different things to kind of go through. So just in looking at this with Deuce Knight being the number 6 quarterback, like I think Julian Lewis might slide down. I
I
kind of
agree.
wonder. I wonder
I
if
was
George
thinking that same
McIntyre slides down. I know he wasn't at the Elite 11, Kyle, so maybe they don't really move him too much. Maybe a spot, but like if I had to guess, the top 3 would stay the same. Underwood's not moving for sure. Zollers didn't have a great Elite 11, but going back to my point about I just don't expect wholesale changes from Elite 11. I think Zollers might be one of them. I think McIntyre, I could see him maybe moving a spot down, but probably hold steady at 3. And I don't do ranking speculations. This is not really something I do often, but uh, I I don't know. I found this interesting today and wanted to talk about it. And then I could see something like Lewis sliding down to 6, and then St. Clair and Knight moving up. Keelan Russell's going to move up. He's been absolutely balling. So you would expect him to move up from 8. But I know Hassan Longstreet has done really well, the A&M commit. So Tim Hyde is pretty high on that. Kamario Taylor, the Mississippi State commit. So it's a pretty deep quarterback class. It's an impressive group. So we'll see, but the thing I don't think you have to worry about is Knight slipping. I think he'll
No,
move
heck
up
no.
a spot or 2 in the quarterback rankings. My guess would be 1 spot, and then maybe comes with 8 national spots, so maybe moves just inside the top 50 for on 3 zone rankings, and then that would have a slight impact on the industry ranking.
Yeah,
So
I'm with
Uh,
you.
yeah, and Justin's comment here says Carr's ranking actually makes more sense to me after hearing Charles. He seems to prefer high ceiling quarterbacks over high floors, and it's much more about like that's an important component to Charles, but it's also the um I do this all the time, for like where are you trending, and I seem to get better and better, and like the car ranking was such a big deal, that like he watched Carr, I think, more than probably any other quarterback. Like, he said he watched almost every single one of Carr's high school games. I watched one full CJ Carr high school game, the one I was at. Kyle, I'm guessing you did too. The 2 you were at. So that's just, this kind of goes to show that, yeah, he really dug into that one, and that's how we felt. He didn't see that upward trajectory that he likes. And last thing before we move on this, um, Mike Goolsby always talks about, like, with rankings and recruiting and scouting, like, what is the process? Like, what is the process with the ranking, or when Coach Freeman and those guys are looking for a starting quarterback? Like, what is their process? What is it? Goolsby wants to know those things. Agree with it or not, you just want to know what the process is, right? From Charles, we get it. He tells us it. We get him on shows a couple times a year. He tells us flat out what he's looking for. So it's one of those things, like, you can agree or disagree, but at least you kind of know where it's coming from. And I feel like he does explain those things. So we'll move on from the quarterback discussion. Folks, if you're watching on YouTube, please hit the thumbs up on this video. Subscribe to the channel for more content. If you are new here, yeah, I'm Mike Singer. It's Kyle Kelly, blueandgold.com, reporters. And we do have our offer still going on, $1 for 2 months using the promo code UND1. Please check that out at blueandgold.com for new subscribers. It's just $1 out of your pocket, and you get 2 months of premium access. So kind of as we get into early July, like I've said for a while, Kyle, that like June official visits lead to July commitments. So I think we're going to start to see that here for Notre Dame in the month of July. So it's a great time to sign up. at blueandgold.com. Folks, if you are in town and you want to check out a really cool spot, Augie's Locker Room is the place to go for one-of-a-kind, unique Notre Dame items. So check out the new location, 1733 North Ironwood Drive in South Bend. It's just down the street from Notre Dame. So if you're in town, you're local, you're driving through, you're in for a game, whatever the case may be, you got to make time for Augie's, which has a wide selection of Notre Dame Stadium pieces, jerseys, helmets, autographs, and one-of-a-kind Rockney items. You can find exclusive Joe Montana signed items and famous sculptor Jerry McKenna's replicas of the bronze statues that you find around the stadium. And Augie gets new stuff in all the time. If he doesn't have something, he's going to go out and find it for you. Visit Augie at 1733 North Ironwood Drive in South Bend and see the vintage helmet display dating back to 1890. He's got some amazing stuff that you're going to want to check out. Visit augieslockerroom.com. You can also give him a call at 574-277-6363. Kyle, I really do like doing these shows with you because I like to bring up topics and just see what you have to say about them, because I really don't know what you're going to say. So for this one, we've been working together, what, a year and a half, Kyle? Something like that?
Yeah.
Never on the air, off the air, have we talked about rivalry football games and recruiting. So this is the first time. I have no idea what you're about to say, so I am interested. So the Megaphone Trophy is returning. The Megaphone Trophy rivalry, I should say. 2026. It's in South Bend on September 19th. And then the next year it's in East Lansing, September 18th. So a good Midwest rivalry for Notre Dame. Two, I don't know if you can call it Michigan State iconic, but it's two of the big programs in the Midwest. They're going to play a couple more times. Notre Dame's dominated this series, but I think this is pretty cool to have back. But from a recruiting impact, for you, is there anything? Is there much to discuss here, or yeah? I'm just curious for your take.
I really don't think there is, to be honest. I don't think, believe it or not, even though these recruits that we cover, these guys are high schoolers, they're teenagers, and even though we probably treat them like they're professionals, and the way we cover them feels so professionalized, like when they're done talking to us, they're probably doing homework or getting ready for prom or going to baseball practice. Like these guys, they're all high schoolers. But with that said, they are pretty smart, and I don't think they are one to make an emotional decision just off the outcome of game. And nowadays, like, there's not really that factor of choosing a school because you get to play, because that school, their opponents, they're closer to home. Like, for example, like USC is in the Big Ten now, UCLA is in the Big Ten,
Yeah.
Stanford and Cal are in the ACC. Like, so you're going to be traveling all around the country to play. And I think the other thing is, like, I don't know this for certain because I've only covered recruiting for a couple of years. And I've only covered recruiting in the NIL era.
Yeah,
So
that's true.
maybe in the past, like an outcome of a big game might weigh a little bit heavier on the mind in the decision of a recruit. But now I feel like NIL is taking the spot of that. Like, I think that's
it's like lowered it. Yeah.
So although these games are really cool for fans, they're great for us media members. I'm pumped about this matchup.
Yeah.
But I don't think Deuce Knight's committing to Notre Dame because he's excited to play Michigan State.
Yeah, yeah. So I think the topic is more about just rivalries in general. Yeah, no one's committing to Notre Dame to play against Michigan State. So I feel like your Duke, North Carolina, to a smaller scale in terms of like high level recruits, like an Army Navy. Like I'm sure some kids would really want to play in that game. And then like going over to basketball, like Duke, North Carolina, like kids like that's a big deal. Like I want to go play in that game. But yeah, you bring up a good point. Like it's just not, or like I'd even throw in like an OU Texas, like kids in that area who know the rivalry. They watched it growing up. They've even been to some games as a spectator, in their younger years. But yeah, now I'm in agreement with you. Like it, like I think Dallas Golden tweeted or posted on Instagram. He was like fired up about it, but it's kind of like a speck, in a just like a drop of a bucket or a drop of water into a bucket. Like it's not really like these games. They just don't like, and especially for Notre Dame. Um, I think if you're recruiting a kid from Southern California playing USC, that is like kind of an outlier. Like when you recruit a kid from an area and Notre Dame plays, Notre Dame comes down here next year or this year, I should say, and plays Georgia Tech, like Notre Dame player in Georgia, like that's cool. But otherwise, yeah, the rivalries in recruiting just don't. It's just not a big deal anymore. Like I go back to Goolsby's years. Like I'm sure Goolsby, like in talking to him and why he picked Notre Dame, the tradition, the brand, the games you get to play in, being independent. Kyle, when we talk to recruits, when's the last time they mentioned, um, you know, really, like being independent? You hear it; it's like a fifth thing, sixth thing. It's not mentioned. It's just not. It's more about the brand, the academics, the coaching staff. It's not about games. It's not about I mean, even like the long time history of the school. It's really not. It's not something that comes up a ton. So that was
Yeah.
my word salad, Kyle.
No, one more. I really like that you brought up like kind of the regionalized opponents like Duke and UNC and then Texas OU. Like the thing with Notre Dame is like their rivalries are so unique, and I don't know it as a Notre Dame fan if you can say that Notre Dame has a true rival, like an arch rival right now,
Dude, I love this topic.
because
You want to dive into this?
yeah, just a little bit because USC Notre Dame that hasn't been a rivalry in years.
That is the one that I point to.
That's pretty much when
There's
you
not like a
think about being a Notre Dame fan, you're
yeah.
supposed to hate USC. You're supposed to hate Michigan. Notre Dame has dominated that USC. USC is an afterthought of a college football program for the last decade.
Yeah.
And
Sorry, go ahead.
no, and just the other thing is like the Notre Dame Michigan rivalry, for example. They don't play each other anymore. I mean, like,
Yeah.
I don't think these players on the team are worried about Michigan or I hate Michigan or anything like that. The terms of the annual opponents that Notre Dame plays from year to year, it's just Navy. That's not much of a rivalry. Um, yeah, I
So, all right,
snipers comment here.
yeah. Well, let me dive in. Let me
I-
dive in. I've given this analogy before. When I got married and I was picking my best man, I wanted to pick a best man who would also pick me as his best man when he got married. I feel like it's similar with rivalries. Like Notre Dame fans, even though they're not playing Michigan, that's a really important part to this. But even when they are playing Michigan, if Notre Dame fans hate Michigan the most, right? And that's like Notre Dame's biggest rivalry. It's like, but then you flip it, right? Where does Notre Dame stack up for Michigan? 2 or 3? It's not 1. I don't think it's even 2. I think Michigan State is probably even there. So, I mean, Michigan State, same thing. You have Michigan. The only one that I feel like is a true like 1-1 is probably USC, but that rivalry just seems to have lost its luster. Like there's not like a passionate hate anymore. Craig says Miami. I mean, Goolsby just wore the Catholics versus Convicts shirt on our show Monday. Notre Dame doesn't play Miami a whole lot. So that is something that I would love to see Notre Dame have, just a straight up annual Midwest local rivalry that they play every year. Like,
Purdue. They're
but
gonna be
Purdue is such a little brother. Like, I think
That's
Michigan
what I'm
State could be
saying.
something. But you would love to see Michigan play every or like an Ohio State something. So
Well,
like yeah. But for now, like RJ says, I passionately hate USC. USC's the one right now, and I think USC, based on like college football history, it's like a Notre Dame USC is an iconic rivalry, top 5 of all time, right? But in right now, past 10 years, like you got to think the Bush push was 20 years ago coming up. Like it was a long time ago. So yeah,
I got a question. I got a question for you, Mike.
yeah.
Who do you think the post 2016, so 17 and on, so like the last 7 or 8 years at Notre Dame, who do you think's their biggest on field rivalry?
Hmm. Now, is it in terms of like impact games? Because I think like they've had some pretty important games with Clemson. Like every time Notre Dame's played Clemson, there's been big games. But they haven't played them every year since 2017. I mean, it's just right. So Clemson's the first team that came to mind, if not USC.
No,
What
that I mean, Clemson was my answer because
yeah,
that's the only team that like
meaningful games. Two
yeah,
in 2020,
exactly.
last year. Like so.
The game at Notre Dame in 2022, the obviously last year's game, like every time Notre Dame
Yeah,
and
2022
Clemson play, there's stakes in those games.
playoff game in 2018.
What are the stakes seeing Notre Dame play? I mean, the
Yeah,
game is mostly meaningless,
yeah.
you know. So
So yeah, no, it's interesting. Like D Rock says, even USC fans, podcasters bring Notre Dame up as the rival. They say it ranks up there with UCLA. D Rock, you're not making the point that you think you're making. I think you're making like that's not a good point. Like, of course, USC should bring up Notre Dame as a rival, but it should rank above UCLA. Like, if this is going to be a big time rivalry, Notre Dame can't play second fiddle to UCLA in the eyes of the USC side of things. That's kind of my thought. Devin says I don't hate Clemson though. So yeah, this is very much where part of the like the local, the hate, like that's got a play into it. So yeah, the rivalry side of things is something that I'm passionate about when talking about Notre Dame because like growing up for me, like I started liking Georgia Tech because I was so sick of seeing Georgia apparel, seeing Georgia flags, seeing all my buddies talk about Georgia, that I just picked Georgia Tech. 'Cause I think it was one of those deals where I hated Georgia more than I liked Georgia Tech growing up. So like does Notre Dame have that? I think Notre Dame fans have that with Michigan, but like no, I don't know how mutual it is. Which probably, to be fair, I don't know how much Georgia hates Georgia Tech compared to like a Florida or like a I don't know, Tennessee or
Bama.
something, but Bama, even nowadays, sure. But yeah, you had something else, Kyle?
Yeah, I think the perfect way to wrap up this conversation is this in terms of Notre Dame's rivalries and how they affect, recruiting battles. You basically just kind of summarizing how Notre Dame doesn't really have a true on-field rivalry. Therefore, I don't think it feeds off the field in recruiting battles. Because, like, if you want to say that Notre Dame's biggest rival is USC, look at those recruiting battles. For example, Kingston Viliamuasa. I mean, like, and all these other top SoCal recruits, none of them are going to USC. USC is pretty much a joke in Los Angeles. Like the St. John Bosco's, the Mater Days, all those programs out there, they're sending their kids to Oregon. They're sending them to Noah McHale. He's a SoCal kid. He's getting ready to commit to Texas A&M. Everyone thought he
Mhm.
was going to be a USC commit at points in this process. Like it just USC's luster and allure in college football right now is so meaningless, and you're seeing it on the recruiting trail
Yeah,
with the types of commitments that they get. I mean, the major point of Lincoln Riley coming to USC was to energize that fan base, energize the fertile recruiting grounds in those areas, and it's kind of been a disaster. They can't keep anyone home.
yeah. Hmm. Yeah. I really do love this topic because, like, you think of the local rivalries that Notre Dame could have, they're either like just go to Notre Dame and do a circle, right? You some of the Big Ten schools like Indiana, Purdue, Illinois, Northwestern, that's not they're not to Notre Dame's level. But then you go more east, to a Michigan State, a Michigan, Ohio State. Notre Dame wouldn't be their number one. So I don't know.
You know,
USC is like all it's got right now.
you know who Notre Dame's biggest rival on the recruiting trail might be?
Yeah, I wanted to talk about that. So what do you think?
Wisconsin.
Wisconsin?
Owen Strebig, James Flanagan,
Eh,
Gulak,
let's think bigger than 2025 class,
Ivan
though.
Taylor,
I think
Maddie Augustine.
I think if you were going to look at like the past 5 years, which is easy for me to do because when I start covering Notre Dame, it would probably be Michigan.
Ohio
The
State recently, but
yeah,
Ohio State needs
which
more
yeah.
guys.
So, all right, let's move topics here. Hold on 1 second. I need to text my wife to come get my pet that is trying to get out of my room here. Let's dive into the 2025 targets here. I mean, this is titled the latest on stretch run of 2025 class. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Actually 9 guys to talk about. Derek Meadows, Kyle. Look, I mean, with a lot of these guys, I know Irish fans, you want the updates. You want me to tell you what's going to happen. But I'm waiting to happen. Like these kids took their visits and it's deciding.
Decision mode, man.
It's decision mode. There's not a whole lot of back and forth trending this way. It's really just like I can tell you that I think Notre Dame leads here, which I do, but like it doesn't matter. Like we're not in the spot right now of who leads. We don't care who leads. It's a decision like who's going to get him. Are you following me, Kyle? Like, does that make sense? Like,
I want to add to your point by saying this. I was texting with one of Notre Dame's top targets yesterday, and they told me they're in decision mode right now. They don't have a leader. They're trying to decide between a certain number of schools, and I think that's the way it is with all these guys right now. They've seen all the teams on visits. They got all their information. The dead period is here. Some guys have commitment states, others don't. It's kind of crunch time, man. That's where we're at.
Yeah.
There's so I'm with you on the whole leader thing.
Yeah. So Derek Meadows, though, we like Notre Dame. Steve Wiltfong just did his big story on it. Talking to his dad, just kind of what they're thinking right now, what they're saying about some of the schools. Yeah, I would still give the Fighting Irish the edge here, but it's pretty close. I think it's coming down to Notre Dame and Bama. Again, I would just kind of stick with my guns and say Notre Dame, but I'm rolling with what my sources on the Irish have said on this on their end of things, that his relationships are just so strong, up and down, in South Bend between the commits and the staff, like the recruiting office guys and everything. So yeah, Derek Meadows, again, I would say Notre Dame, but it wouldn't be a shock if he ends up at Alabama. Cards on the table. Let's be completely honest here. That's what we're doing. Tanook Hines is one of the biggest head scratchers in terms of just like it's difficult to kind of figure out what's going on. To be completely honest with you guys, like I think that Notre Dame is the leader. Kyle, you had talked about what Steve Wiltfong has said in the past about like, well, if you say Notre Dame and Texas, and then Notre Dame and USC. Like, what's the continents? Notre Dame. I think that might kind of be the deal here, but Hines is just a pretty tough one to read. Talking to different Notre Dame sources, some seem confident, some seem don't, or they're not as confident. So I would lean Irish here as well, but with not even as much confidence as I do with Meadow. So what do you think about these two guys?
Just starting with Meadows. I'm with you on a Notre Dame Alabama battle, and I kind of want to clarify what I've said about Michigan being in this race. Because over the past couple shows, I feel like maybe the narrative that feels like I've been trying to create is like a Notre Dame versus Michigan battle for Meadows, when I've said that like Michigan is more in the picture than what I thought. And I just want to, I know I'm clarifying those comments way after the fact, but in terms of where I think Michigan fits in this battle, is that I didn't really think going into OVs that Michigan was much of a contender, like at all. Like I don't even think Michigan was in the picture for Meadows. But after learning more, that's how I learned that Michigan is just simply a contender for Derek Meadows. But when you talk about the battle here, I think it's Notre Dame and Alabama. And what worries me most about Notre Dame is right now they're pitching Derek Meadows on the vision for the offense, because it hasn't been proof of concept yet. They haven't put it into action. And that's one of the things that when I talked to Derek Meadows' dad after the official visit, I asked him, like, do you feel confident in making a decision without getting to see Notre Dame's offense yet? And he said, yeah, he said they do. But I can't help but think that this decision for Derek Meadows would be a little bit easier if we were entering year two of the Mike Denbrock offense. And, there was some history, and, they would know what it looks like. So if they were going to commit to Notre Dame, which for what it's worth, I'm with you. I think that if I had to pick today, I think Derek Meadows ends up
Yeah.
at Notre Dame. I think they're putting their faith into Mike Denbrock and what it could be, not necessarily what it is right now. And then with Tanook Hines, man, I'm kind of with you there. That's a tough recruitment to read. The Texas is interesting here because he kind of popped up on campus there out of nowhere,
For Novi, yeah.
but I don't get the sense that Tanook is a priority for that
I
class.
think
They're trying to land 3 5-star guys in Khalil Lockett, Jamie French, and Jacorian Moore. And the fact that all 3 of those guys end up in the class are probably slim. Like, I think Texas might lead for all 3 of those guys, but the chance that all 3 of them end up together are pretty slim.
yeah.
And what the thing that's working in Notre Dame's favor here is, like, Chinook has a commitment date set before the Jacorian Moores, Khalil Lockett's, and Jamie French's are all going to come off the board.
Yeah.
Well, I'm kind of speaking out of turn here. Like, I don't want to say, like, but just the sense that I get, I don't know if Tanook would be a take right now for Texas. I don't know if he's
Yeah.
a priority right now.
Yeah.
So
No, yeah. I mean, Baylor and Arizona State or a couple others, but I think it's Notre Dame, Texas, USC. Um, I think that I think he's become more of a priority for Texas this month. Is it too little, too late? I'm not sure. But, Kyle, when kids post commitment dates, they usually know where they're going. But, I feel like I've
I don't
done
think
as
they
much
do, though.
digging on this one as I possibly could have. And no one seems to think that he's told any staff yet what he's doing. So we'll continue digging, and I'll get a few more gray hairs on this head by the time this one's over. But
July 8th, right? Next Monday.
July 8th, yeah, it's not this upcoming Monday, the Monday after. So yeah, we reported that Blue and Gold this week with his top 6. But I really do think it's coming down to Texas, Notre Dame, and USC. Another commitment day coming up is Jadon Blair. I think it's actually for our pronunciation king over here, Jadon. I think it's Jadon Blair from Winston-Salem, North Carolina, Mount Tabor, Notre Dame, Michigan, Penn State battle. It's been considered that for a long time. He took 4 other official visits, but again, does seem like those 3 programs in really the thick of it as it comes to his decision in what is that, 6 days? The 4th on a Thursday. So yeah, I'm rolling with the Irish here. I think that they get it done. I don't think Penn State had much confidence coming out of his official visit there, and I think Michigan's starting to think that they're not getting them, and I think that kind of points to Notre Dame looking pretty good for Jadon Blair, which I mean this would be a big deal. This has been like their safety, like they're like that long rangey safety target. Like Jadon Blair's been their guy for pretty much the entire cycle. So if Notre Dame's able to close next week, hat off to the staff. Blair straight up told me that after Chris O'Leary left, it was tough. Like, he was thinking about committing to the Irish, and then O'Leary left, and he told me that Notre Dame slipped for him. So if they're able to get him next week after and make up all that ground, it would be quite a good get for the Irish. So we will see.
You know why I think this one's going to be Notre Dame? When you talk to Penn State guys, how are they reporting on this recruitment? It's Penn State and Notre Dame. When
You're going the Wiltfong thing. There you go.
Talking to the Michigan guys, what are they saying? Michigan and Notre Dame. And now you're starting to see.
Well, what about the Notre Dame guys? What about us?
Notre Dame, Michigan, and Penn State. That's what we say.
No, but I think Notre Dame leads. I think Notre Dame's led all month.
Oh, yeah. No, I agree. And here's the other thing is you're seeing the reporting coming in after all the official visits, and other teams, the reporters are predicting Blair to end up Irish. So I think that other staff's confidence are waning. I think Notre Dame remains cautiously optimistic, and we'll find out the outcome on July 5th.
One player who we already know the outcome on, John Anthony Hall. Kind of a weird one that, Notre Dame offers an in-state kid. You think they'd be able to get him, but I was told pretty early on that, Notre Dame could see themselves getting John Anthony Hall, but it wouldn't have been a surprise if he would have, ended up at Purdue. Kid just, was just wired, differently, and he ends up at Stanford. So it's not like a big loss for Notre Dame. The feeling was that Notre Dame offering him, they wanted to add another, guy to the board. You lose Sean Terry, you're taking a big receiver class. You need names. You can't just put all your eggs in one basket. So don't get me wrong, they would have taken him, but I don't think they're kicking the grass today. They're not banging their head on the wall that John Anthony Hall is going to Stanford. They need to, land those two guys that we just talked about, or I really should say two of the three guys. So we talked about Meadows, we talked about Hines, and then Dylan Robinson. If you made me guess right now what ends up happening with Notre Dame at wide receiver, I would say it's Hines and Meadows, and then Hines and Meadows, and then Robinson. It could end up being Robinson, all three of them. I think Notre Dame would take all of them, in addition to Bettis and Burris. But my guess would be Hines, Meadows, and then Robinson to Washington. Dylan Robinson from Southern California. My guess would be Washington for him. What do you think?
Yeah, I think we're looking at a Notre Dame, Washington, UCLA battle here. And what I've been trying to uncover in this recruitment is Dylan Robinson's positional preference, because Notre Dame's recruiting him as a wide receiver. Washington's recruiting him as a cornerback.
Really?
And UCLA is, I think they began recruiting him as a corner, and now I think they're giving him the option, corner wide receiver. And I truly think, I don't think Dylan Robinson knows what position he wants to play in college. So this is going to be fascinating, because Notre Dame was recruiting another player in the 25 cycle, Brandon Finney, who's an athlete. Notre Dame was one of the few schools to offer him as a wide receiver. They scouted him and evaluated him as a defensive back as well later in the cycle. But Brandon Finney, I think that Notre Dame would have had a good chance at him if he wanted to play wide receiver, but he chose defensive back, and he's going to Oregon. So now we have another one of those recruitments here with Dylan Robinson. So I think that moving forward with him, it's just going to be a wait and see to what position he wants to play. And if he wants to play wide receiver, I think it'll be Notre Dame. And if he wants to play defensive back, we'll see. I mean, Notre Dame's filled up on their deep backboard. So,
okay, interesting. Moving along, Nathaniel Osub Boateng.
I think anyone knows what's going on.
Yeah. This is very much your guess is as good as mine kind of deal. Notre Dame, Michigan, USC. You think those are the three main schools? Michigan seemed to have some confidence coming out of his official visit there last weekend, but time goes on, things fade. I don't know. We'll see. What do you think?
Yeah, I brought this up before with Nathaniel Boateng. When he talked to me after his Notre Dame visit, he said Notre Dame was one of three schools recruiting him the hardest. And I think I said back then I thought the other two were USC and um, Michigan. And now they released the top five with Ohio State and Florida involved. And with Ohio State, Owusu Boateng isn't a priority there. They're trying to Riley Pettijohn, the Texas linebacker. He's their preference. So it's not Ohio State. Florida, I Florida's recruiting operation right now is kind of interesting under Billy Napier. Owusu Boateng hasn't even taken an official visit there yet, so I think this really is Notre Dame, Michigan, USC battle.
Yeah.
Um, and I tried to provide some quotes in his top five story that I posted on Blue and Gold and what he recently said about each one of these schools. My gut tells me this is Notre Dame Michigan battle. And please tell me if I'm wrong here, Mike. But when Goolsby was on, did you guys talk about Owusu Boateng's recruitment?
I can't remember.
And I thought I
Oh
saw.
yeah, we did. We did.
I
Yeah, we
don't.
did.
Maybe Goolsby didn't say this, but thought I saw something out there about how somebody was talking about Nathaniel Owusu Boateng, and they basically said that he's kind of been really into the glitz and glamour of the recruiting process, and those
Sounds
type
like
of kids
Goolsby.
don't end up at Notre Dame. So after I heard that, even if that wasn't Goolsby, even if that was a guy on the side of the street that told me that, that actually put something in the back of my head where I'm starting to think. I was like, wait, you're kind of right. Like, where do
Yeah.
like when you see these types of guys that are like kind of what's the word for it? Like building up the height in their recruitment and like what the outcome's going to be and all that. Like, by the way, there's nothing wrong with that. Like, I'm completely like, it is what it is. Like, but I don't think those types of recruits end up at Notre Dame. Maybe Nathaniel Wusu Boateng could be the outlier.
Yeah.
In fact, if you made me pick today, I think he would be the outlier. I think my gut tells me that he ends up at Notre Dame here. I think he's really him and his family have dove in head first, feet first, whatever you want to say. They're all kind of all in on Notre Dame together. So we'll see how this one plays out. I wouldn't be surprised if it goes into the season.
Someone asked earlier, like, what are the commitment dates? Like, we know of Hines and in Blair, but otherwise, man, like it's July, August ish. Like it seems all these guys want to announce pretty soon. Boateng's the only one who I could see stretching it into the season. He's just not ready or wants to keep going. But otherwise, pretty much all these guys were expecting like early mid July ish, right? I mean, Dylan Robinson, the guy we'll talk about next. Yeah, Meadows might be more. I feel like I've seen so many different
Meadows,
takes on Meadows
he's got a September 1st deadline.
deadline.
So I think we'll expect that to get wrapped up here within the next month, if I had to guess.
Okay, so there you go. And then a really interesting one, Kyle. When we do our show next Friday, assuming we will, we're gonna have to find some more stuff to talk about. Just not go one through one or one by one through all these guys.
Might have to, man. That's just kind of the best way to do it at this rate.
Yeah, it's just like, and I want to be able to give some new stuff, but like Ben Faraimo from Southern California, the linebacker, who it seems down to Notre Dame, Washington, USC, Texas. This one I've been digging on all week, and it's difficult to get anything. This was the one where Madden's always kept things close to the vest, but Texas has a lot of momentum coming out of his official visit there last weekend, and our USC on three reporter Scott Schrader posted yesterday that he's hearing some optimism on the USC side of things, and there's a potential that Madden might stretch out his recruitment a little bit longer. So it seems like I know you've talked about Washington. I mean, I personally haven't heard much buzz of Washington, but it really does get the vibe of yeah, all options are on the table. I like Notre Dame for him at the end of the day. but I'm not as confident as when I put in that prediction after his official visit. Like, it seemed like pretty close to, like it seemed like he was right behind the line of a silent commitment. Like, he was getting close to crossing that line, but wanna take those other visits or just visit, I think. I think at that point, he just had, Texas, and he goes to Texas this past weekend, and I think that has, um, really impacted where he's at. Do you agree with me, Kyle?
I respect Scott Schrader. I respect his reporting. And I'm sure I mean, obviously there's validity behind it, but I just don't know how I can see USC landing Madden Faraimo.
I
When
He would
what
have to stretch things out, like, he would have to take it into the season
but here
probably.
Madden told me he's been to USC so many times. Like, what else does he need to see from USC other than what their defense is, what it looks like under their first year D coordinator this year, Coach Lynn? And that this kind of gives me vibes that USC is trying to get Madden to push his decision date out because they want him to see which can be on what their defense is going to look like, so he can make a more informed decision. And I think part of the reporting here is also that I think USC is starting to set the stage that even if Madden does commit to say Notre Dame or Texas, that they're not going to stop recruiting him. But here's the thing with USC is this is something I said earlier in my show. Under Lincoln Riley, what top recruit from SoCal have they landed? I mean, they've hardly even landed any kids from California, let alone SoCal. So I'm going to be way more pessimistic on USC here, and that until I see that they can land anyone. Maybe Madden Faraimo is going to be that guy for them, but it does kind of feel like Notre Dame, USC. The reason that I said Washington, I felt was a little more involved because like I didn't even bring up Washington when I was talking to Faraimo after his official visit. He brought it into me. He's like, he's kind of basically, I just want to let you know, like, I had a really good trip to Washington. He's like, he was, you know, he's kind of like, I see the buzz with Notre Dame here, but you know, I enjoyed my trip to Washington. So,
Okay, interesting.
but yeah, I just don't why like I've said this like in Ivan Taylor's recruitment, for example, with I was like confused why Alabama was pushing so hard for him and just putting all their eggs in the Ivan Taylor basket when all the top guys in the state are going elsewhere. And I kind of feel the same way with Texas. Like, obviously, Madden Faraimo's elite linebacker. He's a guy that has shown 5-star potential, but like, where's this Why isn't this optimism focused on Riley Pettijohn, a guy that's in the state? I'm sure there's other top linebackers right there in Texas's backyard that they should be landing guys like that. So I'm sure Madden Faraimo had a great trip to Notre Dame, or sorry, to Texas. But like when you look at Notre Dame's roster, I think you see a lot more type Madden Faraimo type players on Notre Dame, like those types of personalities, those types of guys on Notre Dame's roster, than what you see on US or on Texas's.
I wanna wrap up. Brandon Logan's in a really interesting one. He camped at Irish Invasion. I heard he did really, really well, and I'm told that he's from Fort Wayne Snyder. He's a Vanderbilt baseball commit, safety offers from Indiana and Iowa, and I'm told Notre Dame's staying in contact with him, so I don't know what this exactly would look like. Is this like, Ivan Taylor goes somewhere else or not? Like, we'll see, but just if Brandon Logan ends up at Notre Dame, just remember old Mike Singer because I think that it is something that is like just something that interesting to kind of remember that Brandon Logan is still, in the mix for something. I don't know. Maybe it's like a Dylan Faison type deal or Jordan
I was just gonna say, you know what this recruitment reminds
Jordan Faison type thing, not Dylan. Dylan's straight up football scholarship guy for Notre Dame, but so we'll see because
dude,
he's a outstanding baseball player.
this is so much like Jordan Faison's recruitment where Brandon Logan's
Even I'm sorry, Kyle. Even down to the school, Iowa. Iowa offered Faison.
yeah, exactly. Iowa gave Faison a football scholarship offer, and yeah, I mean, like Faison loved Notre Dame. Notre Dame was his dream school. That's why he was going there to play lacrosse. And when they gave him the football opportunity, like, of course he was going to take it.
Yeah.
And I think Brandon Logan's kind of the same way. I think he holds Notre Dame in high regards, and if they can find a spot on the roster for him, who's to say he doesn't end up in Notre Dame?
And then just lastly, Ivan Taylor.
If he would have flipped, I think it would have flipped by now.
I still think it's going to be Notre Dame, but it's not over. Bama, Michigan. I don't think as much Florida. I think Bama, Michigan though. Have his attention, but I don't think he's going to go too much longer without making a decision. It's interesting, kind of like, if he does want to go elsewhere, what will he do? He'll just tweet, he'll decommit and then flip the next day, or just do it all in one post. Like, but if he's gonna stick, do you like tweet it out like, I'm locked in? Do you go to a Mike Singer or Kyle Kelly and you say, can you put this out? Like, how does that? Because I feel like I haven't covered many of those, or is it just nothing, or it's just, I don't know. That's where the recruiting junkie in my like in me goes. Like, how, if he wants to stay with Notre Dame, he's going to shut down his recruitment, or will it kind of just be like, this is the rest of the year?
How many?
Just it until signing day. Like, I'm not like shutting it down. He's just going to go. I don't know. We'll see.
How many viewers do we have left on our show right now?
We got 162.
Okay. Well, all the 162 people and everyone that's listening back on Spotify and Apple Podcasts and going to watch this show, the way you just heard Mike Singer talk is how I talk to him daily, and how I drive him. Absolutely, how I have drove him absolutely insane for the last 18 months, whatever. Because this is where my mind is.
No.
Single recruitment. I'm always thinking about different outcomes, different avenues. I'll bring this up, that so when when Notre Dame had their official visit weekends, they had all the most of the defensive guys on June 7th and all the offensive guys on June 14th. And when
it wasn't like 100%, but
most. So basically, June 7th was primarily the offensive weekend. June 14th was primarily defensive.
Flipped.
I'm flipped. Let me restart here.
Yeah,
June 7th to 9th was primarily defensive weekend. June 14th through 16th was primarily offensive weekend. But Ivan Taylor, he didn't visit until the 14th weekend. Well, you know who else didn't visit until the 14th weekend? Was Ethan Long. And it could have been something as simple as Ethan Long just had a schedule conflict, and he couldn't have visited until the 14th and 16th. The first thing that I thought of when I heard that Ivan Taylor was visiting Alabama is I texted Mike and I said, this is exactly why Notre Dame's going to have Ethan Long visiting on the 14th. It's because even though it's an offensive weekend and Ivan Taylor's going to be there on the 14th, Ethan Long is Ivan's best friend in the class, and they want those guys to be together. Now, that was pure speculation on my point. This is how my brain works with every one of these recruitments, and this is how I drive Mike insane. So hopefully I don't drive our audience insane.
I'm trying to find that exact message because it was so freaking funny. You were not happy with me with my response, but
it's where my head goes with all this stuff, man. I'm keep an open mind.
I can't find it on. I don't know if it was on text message or not, but I was like, Kyle. So I was like, so you think they preemptively did that? Like, I don't remember, but it was funny. Anyways, well, that is going to wrap up the show there. I think we covered everything. We sure did. JCar says Kyle running recruiting simulations in his Excel sheets. Do you have any? Do you still use any of those Excel sheets, like the spreadsheets and stuff?
It's funny you say that because I've been really behind on them, but I was thinking about taking some extra time today to freshen those things up.
See,
I
just
don't
something
think so.
else.
Maybe we'll see.
Yeah, Kyle used to say it's on the spreadsheet, Mike. From like, hey, do you have this kid's number or whatever? It's on the spreadsheet, man. He hasn't said that in a while.
Hey, most of that stuff is still on there.
I know. I'm just not a spreadsheet guy. I'm very much a crap. I forgot about that. The newsstand article this morning that I took from you. Yeah, I'm sorry, dude. I need a
I
spreadsheet to
hope
keep
our
me.
readers weren't looking for
I
some
think
morning
I
news.
think they're okay. When I got to the office this morning, which is across the hall from my bedroom, I made the business decision to skip it. So it was too late last night. So, anyways,
You're fired.
I'm fired. Folks, please hit the thumbs up on this video. Subscribe to the channel, of course. Appreciate you guys tuning in for an hour. Take some time taking part of your day to listen to these two fools ramble about some Notre Dame football recruiting. Hope you did find it entertaining and informational. Appreciate you all. And as always, we will catch you next time.